Hi everyone, I'm here with my March wrap up. I read a whole bunch of books in March. I read 12 of them. I wasn't originally planning on filming right now. I thought I was going to have to film tomorrow, but suddenly an hour became available to me, and I thought, why not be able to get this video up a day sooner? So I'm just going to dive right into it because I read so many freaking books this month. Actually, I don't think it'll actually take too long, but I still want to get into it. So I'm just going to get all of these out of the way first. I read a whole bunch of Shadowhunters books. I'll go through them really quick. The Bane Chronicles, which is a short story collection. Clockwork Prince, which is book 2 of the Infernal Devices. City of Fallen Angels, which is book 4 of the Mortal Instruments. Book 5 also, City of Lost Souls. And Clockwork Princess, which is the final book of the Infernal Devices. So I read all of those this month. I'm working on a video that is just about my thoughts on the Shadowhunters books. So I'm going to save pretty much everything I have to say for that. But I really enjoyed them. I'm really enjoying this series. I'm excited to see where it goes. My goal is to finish them all by the end of April. So hopefully that video, kind of summing up the whole series, will be up then. Alright, here's everything else I read. I guess I'll just get started with Emma. This is by Jane Austen. Of course, it's a classic. Everyone knows and loves it. A lot of people, this is their favorite Jane Austen book. This is definitely not my favorite Jane Austen book. I didn't like Emma as a character as much as some of her other protagonists, but I still think it's really great. And this edition was so beautiful. Like, it's such the perfect size. It's so satisfying to hold. Like, I was just, the whole week and a half that I was reading this book, I was just carrying it around with me everywhere I went because it was such a satisfying book to hold and open and read. All right, the next book in my stack is actually the last one I read. I read this one last night. This is Lie With Me by Philippe Besson, which is a really interesting little book. I read this whole book basically in the bathtub last night. It's really quick. It's less than 150 pages. It's translated by Molly Ringwald, which I thought was really interesting as well. But it's kind of a fictionalized memoir. It's all about the writer and his youth and kind of his first romance with another man and kind of discovering his homosexuality and coming out. And it's really, really good. It kind of skips around the timeline a little bit and jumps ahead to almost the present day. So it's really interesting. It starts in the 80s and continues on into his adulthood. And I thought this was a really interesting way to frame a book. And having a story that's kind of fictionalized but totally based on real events was really interesting to me. And I kind of want to talk about this one compared to another one. So I'm going to dig that one out. Another book I read this month, which is Let's Get Back to the Party by Zach Salih. This is also another queer lit book. It's kind of about the year in between the legalization of same-sex marriage in the United States and the Pulse shooting in Orlando, which happened almost a year after. And it's kind of about that year in between, the kind of free-spiritedness of the queer community at that time, which I thought had really great potential, but it didn't really pay off. It felt to me that the format that this book took kind of overshadowed the plot, if that makes sense. So the whole book is told by two alternating protagonists, and they're both kind of playing these polar opposite roles in the story. And it kind of went to an extreme where I think it became so focused on making them these extreme polar opposites that they lost the kind of realness of these characters and the realness of that time in history. So I didn't love this one. But that being said, when I compare it to Lie With Me, I found this one, the story isn't that exciting, but the format that the story takes kind of pushes it that extra step and made it a really, really solid, good read. So I think these are interesting books to talk about, where the structure of the book takes away from the story in this one, but it really benefits this one. Okay, another one I read, this is called Everything You Ever Wanted by Luiza Sauma. This I read because the Between Two Books book club on Instagram was reading it. I thought this was okay. This is a book about, it's kind of the near future or an alternate present, where they discover a very Earth-like planet that can be accessed through a wormhole that's deep in the Pacific Ocean. So already a little bit of suspension of disbelief there. But basically what happens is they're casting people to be on a reality show that takes place on this other planet. So it's basically like Big Brother, where the people are on the planet totally isolated, but everyone on Earth is watching them. But it's one way. So once you go to this new planet, you can't come back. And the protagonist gets selected to go, and most of the book is actually about her life before leaving and what led her to the decision to go to this alternate planet and kind of leave the rest of her life behind. Yeah, I thought this one was okay. It felt very been there, done that. Like, there wasn't really much new being said. I thought that this book was pretty much the exact same storyline as Severance by Ling Ma, which is a book I really loved. Only Severance did a better job. So it's an interesting book. If you liked Severance, check it out. If you like kind of commentaries on social media and reality TV and alternate planets, then you might like this one. I just think it didn't hit as well as I wanted it to. All right, I'm going to save my two favorites for the end. So before I get there, I will talk about My Year Abroad by Chang-Rae Lee. This was an interesting one. I didn't love the plot at all. I didn't care about what was happening. I guess I should back up and say what the plot is. This is about, basically, as the title says, a year abroad. So it's about a young man named, I think his name is Tiller. And he basically gets headhunted by this businessman to become his personal assistant and travel around the world with him. And it's kind of about the journey that they go on, and also about kind of where he ends up after this year abroad. And I thought that both of the plots were like medium interesting. They didn't really go together at all. It kind of alternates between each chapter, like a chapter with the travel and then a chapter with where he ended up after. And it's kind of bizarre. It's a little bit of an absurdist book. The voice of the character who's narrating the story is very clear, and I thought that was a huge benefit to this book, is how distinct the voice was. But the plot wasn't that interesting for me. It's a pretty long book. It was almost 500 pages, I think. It took me forever to get through this. There was one morning where I had nothing else going on. I was like, I just need to get through this book. I've been reading it for weeks, and I'm still only like 100 or 200 pages in. So I just plowed through the rest of it in a morning, and it was painful. I was so excited to be done. But yeah, there were chunks that I really enjoyed, but overall, it wasn't for me. My two favorites, the first one I'm going to talk about is We Play Ourselves by Jen Silverman. This is a book about a theater artist. She's a playwright who is involved in a mysterious scandal that we don't learn that much about at first. So she escapes New York and goes to Los Angeles to kind of reset and get away from all the drama. And when she's there, she kind of falls in with an indie filmmaker who's making a movie about kind of the neighborhood teenage girls. And I actually really loved this book. It was kind of a weird concept, but it hit for me. I don't think this is a book for everyone, but I am someone who was very involved in theater throughout my life, and I now work in the film industry, so this seemed very specific to my interests. It's also super queer. Pretty much every character is LGBTQ. It goes really fun places. I had just had such a fun time reading this. I think this would make a great movie. Anyway, it's like a little bit bonkers, a little bit ridiculous, but the characters and their relationships with each other were really well done. I really liked what this book had to say about art. So yeah, I definitely recommend checking out this one. It's We Play Ourselves by Jen Silverman. And lastly, my favorite book of the month, which was also the first book I read this month, it's Klara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. I'm sure you've heard all about it already. Everyone's talking about this one. But if you didn't know, Klara and the Sun is about Klara, who's an artificial intelligence. It's called an AF, or artificial friend. And she basically is in charge of befriending a little girl because it's kind of an alternate future where basically children aren't socialized as much. So they have these robots to help them with their social skills. But the whole book is told from Klara's point of view, and I thought it was so interesting to see kind of what assumptions Klara makes about humanity and how the world works, and just kind of rolls with it and just finds ways to make everything fit into her narrative that she's assumed is how things work in her head. Or her hard drive, I don't know. But I thought this was such a great book. It had so much to say, and it said it so well. If you've read Never Let Me Go by the same writer, I think these are great companions to each other. They kind of explore the same themes, but from different angles. So yeah, I definitely recommend Klara and the Sun. This is a book that I think everyone should read. And it's probably going to be my top one that I recommend to people moving forward this year. Probably besides Detransition Baby. I think I'm on my like 4th or 5th person that I've told to read that one. Anyway, that's what I read this month. Let me know in the comments what your favorite book of the month was. Hopefully April will be just as productive. I read 12 books. I did the math. It was almost 5,000 pages that I read this month. So we'll see if I can continue on that trend. So now, yeah, that's what I read. I'm going to put all these back on my bookshelf now. You can probably see there's all these empty spots where these books were. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.